Let's bring in Michael Shoebridge now from Strategic Analysis Australia. Michael, thank you for your time tonight. What do these words mean for our relationship with China going into the future?
Well, Amanda, I don't think the words mean anywhere near as much as Chinese actions. And you've mentioned a couple of them, a very dangerous flying that we're seeing from the Chinese military in the South China Sea. But also just this week, we've seen very dangerous manoeuvres by a Chinese warship cutting very close to the bow of a US guided missile destroyer accompanied by a Canadian frigate going through the Taiwan Straits. And all this stuff about jackals and wolves being met with shotguns when they come to us. No one is in Chinese territorial waters when China is doing these things. We're in international airspace and international sea lanes, and China is behaving absolutely unilaterally. That's why it doesn't have friends when it does this. It's acting alone, just like Russia's acting alone.
That language, as you say, might be appropriate if people were in their waters or on their land. But in international waters that are supposed to be free for everyone to travel, those are aggressive moves. So what does this signal for how Labor are going to have to treat China as it goes about representing the interests of Australia in that international space in the next few years?
Well, Amanda, the Prime Minister's speech boiled down to the hope that diplomacy, discussion and communication were going to solve the problems of an aggressive China. But all those questions that the Chinese Defence Minister was asked were about the enormous growing gap between Chinese words and actions. So Australian policy has to be to join with partners and allies like South Korea and Japan and countries like the US and Canada that are willing to assert freedom of navigation through the Taiwan Straits. Why aren't Australian warships joining those patrols? That's the future, unfortunately.
It is an uncertain environment in which Australia needs to be able to act right now. How realistic a possibility is it that there might be an attempt by force to change the status quo in our region?
Well, I think the Prime Minister made the point that Australia doesn't seek conflict, but we need to invest in our military and work with our partners so that we show potential aggressors like Beijing that they would have horrible surprises if they started a war. And unfortunately, that's going to take more than words from the government. It's going to take actions. And frankly, not increasing military spending for the next 4 years is not the kind of action. The kind of action we need is what we're seeing from the Canadians and the Americans. Things like actively asserting freedom of navigation through the international waterway that's the Taiwan Straits.
Yeah, there's an awful lot to be said for the idea that the best prevention is preparedness, and not increasing defence spend really doesn't send that message. There were a lot of fears when they came to government that the Albanese administration would be weak on China. My observation is that in some ways they say the right things, but their actions tell a different story. But how would you rate their performance so far?
Well, I think you've got a point, Amanda. We see the Chinese words, soft words, not matching their aggressive actions. And we've got some nice firm words from Mr. Albanese, but I'm not seeing the follow-through actions where we're working, as our partners and allies are, actively to deter China. So our government needs to start matching its words with actions.
Thank you so much for your insight tonight, Michael Shoebridge.